Hello and welcome to another episode of the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Evil Dead from 2013, directed by Fede Alvarez in what I believe was Fede Alvarez's his directorial debut. I think this is the first film that he actually directed. If I'm wrong on that, definitely mention that in the comments if you'd like. But Fede Alvarez would actually do two other pretty big movies, big name movies that I remember. I think a lot of people know at this point. The first one, kind of on that. He's done a few other films, but the ones that I know him from, of course, are going to be the film "Don't Breathe," which is like a home invasion movie with a little bit of a twist on it, which I really enjoy that movie. Maybe we'll talk about that one at some point if we get the chance. And then, of course, I think most recently in 2024, he directed the film Alien Romulus, which I really like that movie for what it is. I'm not going to kind of spoil my opinions on it too much because I do want to do an actual review of that movie. I did do a first impressions watch whenever I first saw it in theaters, but my opinions may have changed or they may not have. I don't know. We'll see whenever we talk about that one. But I remember back in 2013 when this movie came out. I remember this movie was like spread around school. I was still in high school. I don't know if I mentioned that already. I was still in high school, senior year of high school, and I remember this movie was spread around the school like wildfire. I mean, like everybody was talking about this movie. I remember hearing people in the back of class kind of talking about it, and I remember just hearing everyone talking about this movie, about how violent it was, how gory it was, how it was the scariest thing they'd ever seen. It was the most violent thing they'd ever seen. And I'm over here, of course, I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, think that I know everything. And, just because I've seen Cannibal Holocaust or like August Underground or something like that at the time, which I was probably way too young to have seen either of those films. But I'm over here like, most violent thing I've ever seen. Hilarious. That's so funny. That my kind of like jaded ass was like, oh, whatever. It's fine. It's not going to be better than the original. There's no way. I love the original so much, which is true. I love the original Evil Dead trilogy. I covered them a few months back, and I don't want to give that impression that I enjoy this movie more, which because I don't. I love the original trilogy for what it is. This is a completely different kind of experience. But anyway, so when I finally got to see the movie, it probably was like a year later. So I know I was out of high school at that point, and I remember I'd gotten this DVD from the Family Video that was in my town was closing down, which is sad to even think about. I can't believe Family Video's been gone in my town anyway that long. Like that's crazy. It's crazy to me. It feels like it was just yesterday. But I remember I went there and bought just a big old stack of DVDs, and this was one of them. And I took it to a friend's house, watched it that night, and I was really expecting not to like it. I was like, I'm not gonna like this. Again, me being the jaded, 19-year-old at this point, like I'm not gonna like it. It's not gonna beat the original, so on and so forth. And remember sitting down and watching it and being very pleasantly surprised by this movie. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. And I've actually just come to grow to love it even more over the past several years, 13 years, I think that is. I do really enjoy this movie. Now, of course, again, like I said, it does not top the original films for me, especially like I have this deep love for the first Evil Dead. Like I love that movie so much. But this is one that definitely, again, I absolutely love it. And I actually should have included this on my rainy day list that I did, because this is definitely one that I watch on rainy days, rainy nights, so on and so forth. Maybe I'll do a part 2 to that, and this one will probably be included on that. Again, very pleasantly surprised. I definitely enjoyed this movie. So I'm going to read the back of this DVD, which again is the same DVD I've had. I need to upgrade this. I've had this for so long, and it's beat to hell. It still works. I actually just watched this pretty recently for this review. A secluded cabin, an ancient curse, an unrelenting evil. The original producers reunite to present a genuinely terrifying reimagining of their original horror masterpiece. Five young friends have found the mysterious and fiercely powerful Book of the Dead. Unable to resist its temptation, they release a violent demon on a bloodthirsty quest to possess them all. Who will be left to fight for their survival and defeat this unearthly force of murderous carnage? So that's something I actually failed to mention too just a second ago. So when this movie came out again, I was thinking of it as a remake, and as I've gone more like I've been with this movie a little bit longer. I don't really look at it so much as a remake, but as a requel, like a remake, like a reboot sequel in a way. Because like honestly, I feel like you could just fit this movie into like the Evil Dead universe in a way if you want to, because of course everything nowadays does multiverses and so on and so forth. Like, but I think Evil Dead really works for that. That concept, of course, with the Necronomicon and the time travel and things like that, I think that it works really well, and of course, this film kind of is the start of kind of a new trilogy that's going on, with another one even coming out soon, which I'll talk more about at the end of this review. But yeah, that's just the way that I look at it. I don't look at this as a straight up remake. I look at this as just kind of another sort of like a fresh installment, like a modernized sequel or a legacy sequel or something like that. That's kind of the way that I see this movie. So this movie has a pretty small cast, which I'll mention the cast really quick because I'm getting sidetracked here, so sorry, bear with me. So Jane Levy is in this movie. She plays Mia. She's kind of our main girl that we follow in this movie. She sort of the whole movie kind of revolves around her, which again we'll get to in just a minute. Shiloh Fernandez, who plays David, Jessica Lucas, who plays Olivia, Elizabeth Blackmore, who plays Natalie, and Lou Taylor Pushy, I think is how you say that. His name is Eric. And funny little kind of fun fact, I don't know if anybody knows, somebody actually brought this up to me several years ago. I didn't even notice, but all the characters' names, if you put their initials together, it spells demon, which is funny. So of course we have David, Eric, Mia, Olivia, and Natalie. So I thought that was a fun little kind of nod in there. I never really even really noticed that till somebody kind of brought it to my attention. And that's really kind of about it. Like that's really kind of our full cast there. That's who we're going to be spending, most of this movie with. So again, it kind of comes back into true Evil Dead fashion. And that's something about this movie too that I can say is this is sort of like a almost like a I don't really want to say return to form, because of course the first Evil Dead would be, it was a dead serious kind of horror film that it was, that's what it was. It was a horror film, whereas Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness kind of leaned more into the comedy aspect of things. I think this one really stuck with that horror, those kind of horror roots that kind of started the first one. So that was something that I thought was really really nice. It follows the plot of the original Evil Dead pretty closely. I mean, it's not like a shot-for-shot remake by any means, but it's pretty close to kind of what's going on in the original film. So basically, this group of 5 friends are meeting up at this cabin, out in the middle of nowhere, and basically they are there for Jane Levy's character, Mia. She is trying to kick her drug habit, which is like heroin or meth or something. I don't know. But basically what they're doing is they're taking her there to like detox over like several days, and they're going kind of out in the middle of nowhere because this is I guess like their family's cabin or something like that, if I remember correctly. And so they're out there just kind of in the middle of nowhere, so nobody will bother them. They are all there for like however long, until she kind of detoxes off this shit. And so they're at this cabin, and they when they walk in, Mia kind of notices this awful smell. Like she just keeps talking about this smell, this odor, and she doesn't know where it's coming from. And they eventually kind of find out, it kind of leads them into this basement, where they go down there and there's tons of just dead cats and other animals just hanging from the ceiling, just rotting. and they go down there, and she's freaking out about this smell, and they cut all these cats down, and David kind of disposes of them, and of course they find this trash bag, that's down there, that's kind of wrapped up in barbed wire. Very ominous, something I probably wouldn't have touched, but I don't know, my curiosity probably would have gotten the better of me. So they take this upstairs, and again, as Mia's kind of detoxing and freaking out and kind of walking around out in the rain, Eric, he opens the trash bag and he cuts the barbed wire off, and that is when we see the new version of the Necronomicon that is crafted, for this movie, which is disgusting. It doesn't have the face, which is something I really kind of wish they would have put on there. I really like the face on the front of the Necronomicon from the original trilogy, but it's of course a lot more kind of realistic looking. It's again still bound in skin. So he opens this book and is looking through all these passages which have been kind of scribbled out and everything, and you see things that are say, don't write it, don't say it, don't hear it. Basically all the arrows pointing to this, all of these passages saying, close this shit, don't read this, don't do whatever the hell you're thinking about doing, Eric. Like, just don't do this. But anyway, Eric reads it. He reads the passages. He actually has to kind of like scribble over them so that they'll show up on this piece of paper so that he can read them. So he reads them, and then of course the evil comes out and possesses Mia, and she starts seeing shit out in the woods. Like herself. She sees like an evil version of herself out in the woods, and she freaks out, and she comes back to the cabin, and she's telling them, and of course nobody believes her. Everybody thinks she's tripping out. So she decides to leave, and she takes the car and ends up crashing the car. And that is where we get the infamous tree rape scene, which is so painful to watch, even being a man. What happens in this scene is just, you watch it and you're like, ugh, like I can't imagine actually being a woman and kind of witnessing this. It's just very painful. Even the original film, it was a very kind of uncomfortable scene to watch, but in this one, you really feel it. You really feel that pain with this thorny branch that goes up into her. Anyway. So, after that, she comes back and she's all beat to shit. She's beat to shit. And everyone just thinks that, basically, they think that she's, freaking out, because she's withdrawing. And they try to keep her at this cabin, the best they can. And they think that she's, like, saying all these things and she's doing all these things so that they will take her home. Like, she's trying to injure herself so that they'll have to take her to a hospital. And so, again, nobody really believes her. And really it kind of reaches its boiling point. No pun intended. I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I did that. It reaches its boiling point when Mia is in the shower, and she turns the hot water on so much that it burns her skin, and it starts to rip open her skin and everything like that, and gives her these horrible burns. And they come in, and David tries to drive her to the hospital, so he leaves. And of course that's when Eric notices that in the book, one of the symptoms, I guess you could say, of being possessed by this evil is pouring boiling water on your skin. So that happens. It's very gruesome, and it looks very painful. All the effects are done really well in this movie. Very, very, very visceral. A lot of the stuff that goes on in this movie. And so while this is, basically the shit just kind of hits the fan at this point. David realizes that they cannot leave the cabin. The road is flooded. So he comes back. They lock Mia in the basement, where she is sort of the Cheryl character from the first film. Now in this basement, and David kind of takes over the Ash role at this point in time. He's kind of our lead guy that we're following. And again, like I said, basically the shit just kind of hits the fan at this point. People just start freaking out. There's a great scene where Olivia is like literally trying to cut her face off with a piece of glass. The girlfriend Natalie, she cuts her own arm off and attacks them with like a nail gun. She's like shooting nails into her face. And poor Eric. Eric is the kind of dumbass who started all this, so he kind of he kind of deserves some of this, but I mean, Eric just gets the shit beat out of him, and you can really tell that the people who made this film, they were really trying to find the most uncomfortable things that could happen to the human body in this movie. They were trying to make you uncomfortable as possible, and I think they succeeded. I think they did really well at that. It's very, very brutal. A lot of the stuff going on in this movie. So, kind of as we go on, again, just the shit is just hitting the fan in this cabin until we kind of come to the point where David kind of more or less hatches this plan where he is going to kill Mia, but he's going to resuscitate her, because at first he's just going to burn down the cabin and leave. Like, he's just going to burn everything and walk away. But he kind of has a change of heart, and he is going to, again, like I said, he's going to kill Mia, because one of the ways that you can get rid of the deadites in this film is to bury them alive or burn them. There's several ways that it tells you that they can be destroyed. So what he does is he manages to sedate her, and he takes Mia outside. He buries her alive. Where we get this good little exchange that's very reminiscent to like the original Evil Dead, but a much more serious tone, where Mia kind of shifts back to normal, and she's kind of like more or less trying to guilt trip David and trick him. It's a good little exchange that they have. And so David buries Mia alive, and then he digs her back up, and he resuscitates her with a homemade defibrillator that he's made out of like a car battery and some needles. So I'll say this: this is probably the part of the movie that I don't really care for. This is something I really wish they would have just left alone. Like, I really wish that nothing against Jane Levy, because she does great in this movie. I think she's a fantastic actress in this film. But I really wish that Mia would have just died. I wish it would not have worked. I wish the resuscitation wouldn't have worked, that David just had to kill something like that to add much more of an emotional impact in there. I think that would have been much better than just bringing her back to life like all willy-nilly and kind of going from there. I really, that is the one thing I did not care for, was the resuscitation of Mia. Again, nothing against the character, nothing against Jane Levy. I hate to say that I just wish somebody had died, you know what I mean? But it just, that really kind of took away from the movie to me, in my personal opinion. So, when Mia comes back, of course, she's completely healed. She has no injuries on her whatsoever now, because she's been born again, I guess. I'm sorry, not David. Eric attacks David. He is possessed now, and he kills David. And because David dies, now 5 souls have been taken. They've been killed, and the abomination, can rise, I think is what it says. That's the rule in the Necronomicon. So an evil version of Mia basically kind of comes out of the ground. Mia and this thing kind of have an all-out fight, where Mia kind of becomes the hero in this film. So anyway, Mia fights off the abomination and gets injured in some horrible ways. She manages to rip her own hand off out from underneath a Jeep that is turned over on her hand, which is something. It definitely looks painful, not so much plausible. But again, that's just me. So she ends up killing this abomination with a chainsaw. The whole time it is just pouring down rain, blood rain, by the way. It's raining blood, in Slayer fashion. So she kills the abomination. The rain stops. Everything's fine and dandy. And then we more or less, kind of from there, we just roll credits. And that is Evil Dead 2013. And one more thing, let me mention, we do get one little small cameo from the man himself, Bruce Campbell. He shows up just at the end credits, just long enough to look at the camera and say, groovy. So Bruce Campbell is in this movie, for a very brief moment. And when everybody saw that, even me, when I saw that, all those years ago, I was like, oh shit, they're going to cross this over and we're going to get Bruce Campbell in the next film or something like that. Like, I was excited to see Bruce Campbell come back because, again, he is sort of the face of the Evil Dead franchise. But of course, he did not come back in this film series, in this kind of new trilogy. Of course, they did do Ash versus the Evil Dead, which is a fantastic show that I absolutely loved. I loved that show. I've got all 3 seasons on DVD. Really enjoyed that. But yeah, this movie, like I said, it started this new trilogy. So of course, after this, we would get Evil Dead Rise, which came out just a few years ago, and then more recently, we are going to get Evil Dead Burn, which comes out actually just in a few days as of this recording. So I'm really excited to actually go see that. The trailers actually don't look too bad. It looks like a fun movie. So I am excited to see that. Maybe I'll do a first impressions video, or maybe I'll just wait to actually do a full-on review of it so that I can wrap up the Evil Dead franchise in its entirety. But either way, like I said, I did enjoy this movie, and I do enjoy it the more that I watch it, and as I go on, like over these last several years, I've grown to love it, and it is a welcome addition to the collection, and it's a film that I actually go back to, not like super frequently. Like I definitely watched the original Evil Dead a lot more than I watched this one, but anytime it's a kind of rainy day or something like that, and I'm at home and I'm not doing anything, even if I don't watch it, this movie definitely goes into the player, and I have it kind of going in some capacity because I do enjoy this movie. It's fun. It is violent. It's very, very gory. I don't want to sound conceited like how I was like some of the stuff that I was saying in the beginning of this review, because it is very violent, and it is very gory. So if you're squeamish with stuff like that, may not sit well with you. But I would say personally, if you are an Evil Dead fan, you will enjoy this movie. I think that it does just enough to kind of skip the remake, category, but also kind of still be. I don't know that it gets weird whenever you start talking about that, because of course, like the next film would kind of fall more into like almost sequel territory. I don't know. We're not gonna think on it too deeply. We're just gonna just call this Evil Dead 2013, which is usually how I reference it. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed this review. Stay tuned because I will be covering Evil Dead Rise pretty soon. I want to get those out of the way. Get the last of these 2 films out of the way before Evil Dead Burn comes out. Just kind of to please my OCD. So stay tuned for that. As always, like I said, hope everyone enjoyed this review. Stay tuned for the next episode of the DVD Graveyard. As always, have a great rest of your night, and goodbye.